Are you're going to do an introduction, or do you want me to start?
So hello, everyone. I'm Wendy Schiffman, the Director of the National Center for Teaching and Learning. I want to welcome you all to our presentation today in the TCSPP Thought Leaders Series, Faculty Scholarship Spotlight. Our topic for today is psychological capital and engagement of employees and students. So I want to let everyone know that we're recording this session, so everyone on the GoTo training is muted, but feel free to ask questions by typing in the chat box or raise your virtual hand by clicking on the picture of the hand, and I will take you off mute. So we're pleased to say that this program, when attended in its entirety, is available for one continuing education credit. The Chicago School of Professional Psychology is approved by the American Psychological Association to sponsor continuing education programming for psychologists. Attendees licensed in California can receive credit for MFTs, LPCCs, and LCSWs as required by the California Board of Behavioral Sciences. Attendees requesting continuing education credit are required to attend the entire session and must complete an evaluation and quiz to receive a certificate. The evaluation and quiz will be sent to all attendees via email once the event has ended. This event is co-sponsored by the Institute for Professional and Continuing Studies, and there's no commercial support for this programming. So I'm now pleased to introduce our presenter, Dr. Jennifer Thompson. Dr. Thompson is a business psychologist who is devoted to uniting consulting and teaching. Her main focus is positive organizational behavior, positive psychology, and psychological capital. This involves applying self-efficacy, resilience, hope, optimism, mindfulness, and human strengths in organizational settings. Other areas of practice are employee selection, talent management, program assessment, employee engagement, surveys, as well as statistical consultation to a wide variety of applications. Dr. Thompson has been with the Chicago School since 2002 and was formerly involved in higher education administration at the Chicago School, specializing in student learning and assessment. She's given presentations and authored publications on subjects that include use of technology in student assessment, affirmative action, stereotypes, student learning and assessment, as well as failure in the workplace. Dr. Thompson previously worked for organizational effectiveness consultants, United Airlines, Microsoft, and the American Academy of Pediatrics. This work included development and validation of selection systems, 360-degree feedback, survey designs and implementation, assessment centers, research, and adverse impact analysis. Her past consulting work focused on employee engagement through organizational surveys and analysis, reward and organization structuring for small clinics, strategic planning, and statistical consultation around research methodology and data interpretation. I'm so happy that Dr. Thompson is here with us, and I'm going to turn it over to her now. Thank you, Dr. Thompson.
Thank you, Dr. Schiffman. Hi, so today we're going to talk about psychological capital. And we're going to divide this presentation into three parts. And the first part is going to be just learning about psychological capital for those of you who may not know what it is or may not have heard of it. And then we'll also talk about how it's related to important outcomes, why we should care. I'm going to do a little mini training. So I want you to think of a goal that you have, something that's very important to you to reach. And we're going to use that goal, and I'm going to work you through a small 15-minute mini training session on PsyCap. And lastly, I'm going to wrap up talking about the research that's been done on PsyCap through my dissertation students and through the TCS training program that I had started last semester and continuing this semester. So you'll be able to apply short interventions, and you'll understand how it's related to important outcomes. What is PsyCap, what it's related to, and my work with PsyCap engagement, as well as training PsyCap and the results I've got so far, initial. Okay, so psychological capital is 4 dimensions, and it's known as a higher order construct because these 4 dimensions work in concert and are stronger together. And they're pretty
Jennifer,
familiar.
are you going through your slides?
Yes, I am.
I think they're paused, so we're just seeing that front slide. There, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so PsyCap has 4 dimensions, and these are pretty common constructs from maybe more the clinical literature: hope, self-efficacy, resilience, and optimism. And they have outcomes that are applicable to both academic and professional settings. And the very interesting thing, because PsyCap is state-like, is that it's trainable. And there's some short-term effects and there's some long-term effects. All right, so first we have hope, and then self-efficacy, and resilience, and optimism. And hope is probably not what you're thinking, but it's the ability to create and achieve goals. And it has 2 components, and they're called agency and pathways. And agency is really one's willpower or one's determination to create and work towards a goal. And way power or pathways is the route someone takes to accomplish the goal. And the key to having high hope is to finding your meaning related to the goal and also to creating alternate pathways. Next, we have self-efficacy, and this is your confidence in your ability to achieve a goal. And this comes from Albert Bandura. It's based on social cognitive theory. Individuals with high self-efficacy enter into potentially stressful situations with confidence. They're able to resist stressful reactions. And those with low self-efficacy sort of have an expectation to fail, and they more regularly experience stressful reactions. Self-efficacy is a strong predictor of academic performance and success, and it's also a predictor of engagement in the workplace. Okay, so resilience, the third one, and this has become quite popular lately. This is a learning reaction to any event, and what's interesting to note is within PsyCap, it's not only negative events, but it's positive events. So think about getting married, think about a promotion. These are good events, but they also come with some stress. So resilience is this ability to navigate that. This is also tied to academic performance, but also enjoyment, participation, self-esteem, and again, it's tied to workplace engagement. And the last one is optimism. And this is the ability to have a positive and realistic outlook. And I want to be very clear, this is not sticking your head in the sand or ignoring realistic guidelines, but it's really tied to 2 things, and that is one of them is how you explain what happens to you, and then also sort of this expectancy of what's going to happen to you. So when you explain things of how it happens, there's 3 key pieces: permanence, pervasiveness, and personalization. And permanence is things are always bad for me, always these superlatives. And it's going to last forever. Pervasiveness is everything in my life is bad. It's in every area: school, work, romance. So it's how widespread it is. Personalization is, and I'm to blame for it. So it's my fault. It's me personally. Now, this permanence, pervasiveness, and personalization can be divided into 2 other ways to look at it. Really internal and external. And so what we want to see people do to have high optimism is that they are attributing good things to internal and bad things to external things. So again, to walk through that, the example I just gave you. So for permanence, if something bad happens, I say it's this one test that I failed, not my whole school, not my whole life. But when something good happens, like I passed this test, I have a long history of passing tests. I have this history of doing well. And pervasiveness, again, when something bad happens, you're limiting it to one thing. It's this one class I'm struggling with, not everything in my life. but when something goes well, again, you're saying I have wellness, widespread throughout my life. And really key here for the personalization to not blame the self for failure, but to look at it as temporary external events, and for internally to look back on past successes and take credit for that. So this is where you don't want to see someone saying, oh, I must have gotten lucky on that test, rather that I worked really hard to make a good grade on that test. So optimism is really looking at the internal dialogue you have with yourself. Okay, so those of you in academia, PsyCap is related to engagement, motivation, achievement, and well-being. And Fred Luthens is the key architect of bringing PsyCap together. And two of his sons actually began to use it in business students, and so that's where we have the research for psychological capital in graduate school. And so that's also my interest in my work, is how PsyCap really help first generation students of color, people who may come in and not have the mental fortitude or roadmap or vision of how graduate school is going to look. And for those of you in consulting, PsyCap is many studies meta-analytically tied to all of these, but engagement, because engagement's my area of research and it's a little bit newer. But employees who have higher PsyCap are more committed to the organization. They have higher satisfaction, lower turnover, better organizational citizenship behavior. And key here is performance. They have higher performance, both objective, sales, accidents, anything you can objectively measure. They have higher supervisor evaluations, so supervisors think they're doing better. And they also self-report that they're doing better. In addition, individuals, employees with higher PsyCap have lower stress and anxiety, and they have higher well-being. So this is something that is really key to the workplace. Now, the really cool thing about PsyCap is it's trainable. And this is because it's predominantly state-like. Now, it's unknown if it has a happiness set point, a set point like happiness. So it could be that it does have a set point, but right now what we know is the test-retest correlations are around 0.5, 0.6, so definitely fluctuates. And there's been one longitudinal study that's shown that performance and financial success also causally link with PsyCap over time. So it's state-like, it changes. I think another important piece in my students' work is we're also looking to see what is it that an organization does that lowers it and lifts it up, right? So some of the things we've hypothesized are change events could really decrease PsyCap. And it also could be related to the job demands model. So could be that PsyCap is really tested when the job demands are too high. So it can also be trained live or online, and these sessions are really short. So they're typically an hour or two, and I'll walk through a particular one that a student, alumni now, did here at the school. So we always see short-term results, but we've also seen some training when paired with character strengths that have longitudinal lasting results. From Dustin Johnson has done this study. And we've measured 4 months out and seen that we can keep PsyCap up. Okay, so I'm going to stop here for a poll question. I'll read it out. So I think Wendy's going to do the poll, but the poll is PsyCap state-like or trait-like?
All right, people are responding. We're going to give a little time. Do you want to read the explanations of the difference between the two?
Sure. So if PsyCap was state-like, it would be more stable than a mood, but changes. And if it's trait-like, it's less flexible than a state, something like a personality characteristic, and it tends to be stable.
Right. All right, we have, let's see, 84% have voted. So let's close it out and see what people said. Okay, so 77% said state-like and 23% said trait-like.
Okay, so the correct answer is state-like. And again, this is the key component of PsyCap. It has a test retest of around 0.5, 0.6, whereas personality would have, or a more stable cognitive ability would have a test retest of, 0.8, 0.9. Right? So again, there is some flexibility. Okay, so next we're going to do a mini PsyCap training, and I want this to be interactive. So there's a couple of options. You can just write down. I'm going to give you time to write, but you can also communicate with me in the chat box. So when I do this with students, our online students just write in the chat box what they're thinking if they want to share it. So if you want to share, please write in the chat box. If you don't, then feel free just to write this down. So again, to frame this out, you're going to think of a goal that is really desirable to you. And when I do this with students, I ask them to do an academic goal because I'm doing this training to help boost their confidence in their academics. So they typically would, maybe it's a class they're struggling with or it's their dissertation, so they might pick something like that. But you pick whatever's relevant to you. It could be personal, family goal, work goal, consulting goal, whatever is important to you. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to work on your hope. And just to remind you, this is through increasing pathways and increasing agency. And I'm going to give you, let's see, I've got my clock here. Okay, I'm going to give you several minutes to try as many of these as you can. And so the first thing is when you have your goal, you want to break your long-range goal into steps or sub-goals. And in the business psychology program, we teach students this is project planning. So take your long goal and break it into as many steps as you can. Okay, and then the second thing that I want you to do is to generate different routes to your goal. So to think about alternative ways that you can get to your goal, because most of us get stuck in thinking there's one way. And so if that gets blocked, what is your second plan? What is your third plan? So write that down. Okay, and so the third thing I'm going to ask you to do is write down, and I just changed this really quickly because my slide was wrong. What is the meaning? What is the purpose why you're achieving this goal. What's it going to do for you? And so what I want you really to do is highlight why you're doing it. Really, and this is increasing your agency, your motivation. Okay, so, okay, let me switch this up. There we go. Thank you, Wendy. Okay, so let me stop there and ask, what questions do you have about building hope? How did that go? Was that easy? Was it difficult? Feel free to chat in the chat box, raise your hand.
Yeah, sometimes it's easier to just raise your hand and be taken off mute if you want to talk instead of typing it in. So do you see some people talked about standing up, starting up my own consulting business. Let's see. There's a few that are coming in. I'm not sure if you can see them. Jennifer,
No, I can't see them.
Because I did them to organizer only. So to manage how much time I spend on reading and stress, and now stress on not getting to everything, talking about some smaller goals, time, stress, prioritize with other needs, different routes on my own with others. Let's see. Need to have better expectations.
So maybe could everyone chat to all so I can see?
Yeah, that would be better. Or to come off mute.
Okay. Okay. So if there's no questions, then I'll move on. So hopefully, one of the things that you should experience is when you break down your goal into the steps, it should seem more doable. Again, increasing your hope. When you have a different route, that should lower your anxiety, that you have a backup plan, and also, again, increase your hope to see different ways. And then last, help to see the root issue. Good, thank you. And then the meaning, really, this one's always exciting for me, like, why am I doing this? And when I write down why, that gives me an extra boost too. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to work on is efficacy. And here we're going to work on boosting our confidence. So there's three main ways you can do this. One is to have a role model. And when we talk about this in the student classes, a lot of people realized they did not have one, and they had not picked someone who had done what they wanted to do and to emulate, and someone to talk to, confide in. So picking a role model is a really critical step. Finding someone who's done it before and that you can talk to about it, right? So they're able to visually walk you through what it was like for them. The second thing is having mastery experiences. And for a lot of folks in my classes, this is thinking back on their success in undergrad and realizing they have been successful in school before. And then we do a little bit more work on why is that, what were they doing, and what's going to work now and what needs to change if they're in graduate school. But the idea is if you can think back to difficult goals that are similar and recall your success, but then also recall how you achieve that success, that can boost your efficacy. And the third thing is knowing your strengths. And this is a different training that I'm doing. I'm actually doing today at noon on knowing your character strengths. And so one way to boost your confidence is to apply one of your character strengths. And if you don't know those, think about, what am I really good at? And how can I apply that to this goal? So these three things can help you, and these are not something you write down as much as you start thinking about, how can I do this more, and how can I get a role model? Okay, so the third one, resilience, which is bouncing back. Here's where we start talking, we kind of move away from the goal setting and we start moving into internal dialogue. And one of the things that is a prerequisite in the PsyCap training is I do some mindfulness training. And we talk about mind chatter and what is your mind saying. And so I have them think about the doubt that they're experiencing about this goal. So writing out the doubt. So if you have some doubt about your goal, can you write that out? Okay. And also, I have a question. Could your role model be someone who helps you identify your strengths? I would call that. I didn't have room so much on this presentation. There's a lot. I'm giving you little tiny pieces of this training that I think are just, within a few minutes helpful. But that would be what I would call your cheerleader or your active constructive responder. So to boost your confidence, you also need that, and that's a really good point. You need someone who's in your corner and going to give you this positive feedback, and is not going to question you or cause or sow doubt. But where the students really the light went on, it was like, have they picked a faculty member? Had they picked an alumni or a student a couple, maybe 2-3 years along in the program that is their role model, right? And so I think that's the difference between a role model and a cheerleader or an active constructive responder. Okay, great. Okay, so we have a doubt here that I can think of other routes, which is great. That's really applicable. Okay, so I'm going to use that, and what we're going to do is we're going to use what's called real-time resilience, and we have these talk-back statements. So you write down your doubts, and when you have your doubts, then you'd say, okay, so I'm going to say, I'm doubtful that I can think of other routes. That's not true because I generally can be a creative person. I have doubt that I can think of other routes. Another way of seeing that is I'm feeling blocked right now, but maybe if I sit down and discuss with my friends and ask them to help me, I can generate some more routes. Okay, and then the third one is the most likely outcome is blank, and I can. So this one's a little trickier. We think the worst scenario a lot. Our brain tends to have this reaction that failing a test is going to lead to failing out of school, becoming poor, destitute, homeless. We just kind of take it all the way there, and the most likely outcome is in that particular scenario is maybe I fail the class and I have to take it over. It's middle of the road. Maybe that happens, but it's not the end of the world, and I'll end up learning the material twice as good, and I'll be more confident, and maybe that's where I need to be. In this situation, right? So I because I can think of other ideas in other situations. The most likely outcome is I can think of a few, and I can generate some routes. Okay, so here's another one. The most likely outcome is I will not be as smart as I want to be. Okay, so that's interesting. That's a little more judgment, judgment to oneself. So I would say that's not true because you got in graduate school, right? So you have to be a certain level of smart to get in graduate school. Another way of seeing that is you might have to study twice as hard as you thought you were going to be as smart as you want to be. But I would also I want to give props to attendee 26 because or that's how I'm seeing you, is because you're not as smart as you want to be. You already have a growth mindset, and that is you feel you can get smarter. So some people feel like I'm this smart and that's where I'm going to stay. And so you're already on a good path because you know you can get smarter. You're just afraid you're not. Okay. It's Elaine. Hi, Elaine. Okay. So, okay, and she says, and I can be a nicer person. Okay. So how are you all feeling about resilience? This is one of those things, the first two things I showed you are fairly easy. This is more of creating a habit. You've got to catch that thought. I'm going to fail this class. I'm not going to do well. I'm not going to propose my dissertation. I'm going to fail comps. You've got to catch that along with the first two components because, you will fail comps if you don't mark out all the things that you need to do to be successful. So it just can't be this wishful thinking. But in combination, you've also got to stop this internal dialogue of that you're going to fail, because that sets up a strong vision for yourself. One shortcut that we practice in the class is saying, "I can do it. I've got this. I can handle this." One of our greatest fears is that we can't handle what's happening. And so this is so true for me. I need to constantly remind myself, I can do this. I can handle this. I've done this before. So having that consistent internal dialogue. Yeah. So someone else is saying something that's really helpful is to say this is temporary like everything else. Nothing's really permanent, right? But I would also encourage you to say what are the permanent great things about yourself. So going back to, or actually we're going to it next, optimism. What are the good things about you that have been with you your whole life? Really, the good things are constant and the troubles and the obstacles are temporary. Okay. Oh, there we go. Okay. So the fourth and final one is optimism, understanding your hidden beliefs. And the way we do this is with understanding mind chatter. And part of this is back to that resilience, but really, again, looking at what's your mind saying to you. Is it negative? Is it positive? But really, then more moving towards understanding your explanatory style. And as I mentioned, and I just want to say again, you want it to be positive internal and negative external. So you want to attribute good things to the permanent things about yourself and bad things like getting in a fight, failing a test, a breakup. Any of these things that are setbacks or obstacles. Not saying I'm a failure. This always happens to me. No one will ever love me. To in this situation, this wasn't right. I'm really hurt. But in my life, I have people that love me. I'm a lovable person. Good things are going for me. Okay, I've got a couple more comments that I just want to get to. PsyCap is not only beneficial for adults, but also for high school students. Yes, and I'm really trying to push here at the school. I'd really like to get a positive psych concentration, and that third class being a service learning class where we are disseminating this type of training and character strength training to students. So if you're interested in that, let me know, just as a side note. But yeah, I have a really strong belief that this can be applied. And there's also a group called Corestone that applies this to really young children in India, mainly women, young girls in India and Kenya. And so this work can be done there and has good results. Okay. Has any work been done to introduce PsyCap to youth? I think they call it resilience and they do some pieces of it, but I'd really like to see a program, and I have one dissertation student that is working with this with youth, maybe more community college youth. But yeah, I'm really interested in applying this to children and youth. Even though I'm in business psychology, that's really not my thing. I absolutely, I think I have a strong desire to see it applied there. Okay, here's another great question. Where do we cross the line being too confident or arrogant, and is that a thing? That's a great question. And what's interesting is, I don't see that when we teach the class. I don't have people waltzing in the class and saying, like, I'm so confident everything's going to go my way. They're generally worried about one thing or the other, their dissertation, comp, something. But yeah, too much self-confidence, it can be detrimental. And so again, I'd like to think about these all together. They work in concert together, these four constructs. And if you're ignoring the other ones, which would be setting out the goals, and doing the work, yeah, you could get overconfident and fail. You could also be overconfident and annoying, I'm sure. So yeah, that definitely could happen. Okay. Any other questions about optimism? Yeah. Okay. So I have modesty is acknowledging that our compliments are not alone. Yeah, that's true too. Right. We don't want to be too much like it's all me, right? And maybe referring back to that role model and your active, constructive responder, your cheerleader. Okay. So this is the end of our very quick 15-minute training. Any questions on this before I move to my research? Okay, and I have someone who says, I would really like to take a class like this. And in case I don't know if you're a student or not, but we definitely do offer that. And if you're interested, right now we're in the middle of character strengths, but in the fall we'll probably do PsyCap again. And you can email positive psych at the Chicago school if you want to. Yeah, okay, good. All right, so the next part, and I guess I'll tell a little story as to how I got here. So I'm an industrial organizational psychologist, and through the encouragement of some former students, namely Angela Joyner, and then also some encouragement from faculty, Elazar, and also Luke Mudd, when he was faculty, now he's dean, it really encouraged me to get involved in positive psychology. And so I started to get involved, and I took a sabbatical to read as much as I could, and I had in my mind, I'm going to apply this to work. And what happened is, well, what I found was Luthans had already done it, and it was PsyCap. So I looked in all of his research, and he had a great article saying PsyCap and engagement should be related, but I only found one article that did it. And what happens here in the business psychology program is that in our dissertations, it's very difficult to measure performance. And so it's very hard to get that. But employee engagement is the precursor to engagement. The precursor to performance. And it's a very hot topic right now. And it's very easy to measure with the Utrecht 9-item scale. And so what I started doing is the students that were working with me would say, let's study PsyCap. And so my very first student, Mark Straitsman, did a study, and he had about 131 people. They've been in their current organization for 6 months or longer. And he showed that PsyCap has a positive relation to engagement, and that correlation was about 0.64. So a strong correlation. And our sample is not quite large enough, but we initially found that hope and optimism were more related to engagement. And we're currently working on combining the data from all of these studies to, again, look and make sure that PsyCap is a second-order construct for engagement. Okay, and then the second study that was done by Jamie Rath's lab, she was interested in the PsyCap of leaders in behavioral health homes. And what was unique about this is we were able to isolate groups. So each home had one leader, maybe two, and then we averaged their score. But what we did is we measured PsyCap of all the employees by location, and then the leader, and then we looked at customer satisfaction. And so what we found, again, was just right off the bat for all employees, all leaders, PsyCap, again, was related to engagement, 0.59. And then the other thing that we found is that PsyCap is significantly related to engagement also, but the team leader PsyCap, so the leader's PsyCap, was a predictor at the group level of patient satisfaction. Now, prior research has shown that the leader's PsyCap influences their team, right? Now, we unfortunately had a really small sample size, 109. And in order to do multi-level regression, we really needed, you probably triple this. We had 12 teams, and they at least had 5 members. But again, that's just, that's like doing a correlation with 20 people. So I think we would have found more, but we just didn't get enough people to respond. But again, the important thing is we were able to show the leader impacts the customer satisfaction. So leaders with higher PsyCap, higher customer satisfaction. Okay, and then the third study, Heather Sager, and we're presenting this in Australia this summer at the Positive Psych Conference, is, again, we wanted to look at organizational change. And what were the factors of organizational change? And was it PsyCap, or was it the organization that impacted how successful the change was? And what we found was it was actually the organization. PsyCap did not affect organizational change like we thought it would. But we did once again show that PsyCap was related to employee engagement. And again, nice strong correlation, 0.63. So let me stop there. I see you have a question. Okay, so I have a question, and I didn't see these. I'm not sure they came to all. Wouldn't externalizing own failures result in recurrent failures? And I would say no. I mean, obviously, if you take no responsibility for your life, then yeah. And there are people who are like, it's always somebody else's fault, and it's never my fault. And I don't think that's what we're saying. I think what we're saying is when you fail, you're able to say it's this one thing. It's temporary. It's not it's this one test. It's not that you're dumb, and your whole life is not a failure. So I think there's a slight difference there. And then I also have a question from Manny. Hi, Manny. I've learned to put things in a time continuum to put thoughts and emotions in perspective. These tools are used to navigate college as well as business career. I see this transferable. And actually, I did just read Manny's proposal this morning. And I do think your personal narrative storytelling is very tied into this. And I'm not sure how yet, but it's that developing that great personal story for yourself. And that might be the boosting the confidence, and also like being able to kind of shed some of the obstacles and really focus on the good things. So I feel like that's just another tool, right, to kind of get at the same thing we're trying to get at. Okay. Okay, so these 3 studies, attendee 1, where can we find the research on these? Okay, so I've cited them, and you can email me for them. So Mark and I presented this at the Positive Psych Conference in 2015. Raslav, that's her dissertation. You can find that in ProQuest. And then, and also, you could also, these are all dissertations, so you could go search for Straitsman and Sager as well. And then this poster I can send you, but you're probably more interested in the dissertation. And that would be Sager in 2018. I'm not sure the year on Mark. Okay, so great question. Is there any study in the introduction of the intervention and how they raise PSYCAP? So here, this is really important. These studies, and it's, let me get my, okay, so these studies are just cross-sectional, just correlational, meaning we measured it at the same time. So there's self-report bias, there's time issues, but we're psychologists. That's generally what we do. Okay. However, my next student, Dustin Johnson, wanted to do a training intervention, which is very discouraged because it did add on a couple years to his dissertation, but we do have some amazing results from it. And this is a picture from his dissertation. And we're also presenting this at the Positive Psych Conference in Australia this summer. And so in this training intervention, he did an online web training, and I think if I remember right, it was character strengths was 2 weeks, PSYCAP was 4 weeks, and the combined training was 6 weeks. And so what happened here was Dustin really had, he really was convinced that character strengths would boost the state-like nature of PSYCAP. And I wasn't quite on board, but I said, yeah, let's try. But he absolutely showed that it did. And so what happened here is you can see this is engagement in their job. And what we showed was that PSYCAP, so the people that were in PSYCAP only, they had this significant increase from time 1 to time 2, but at 4 months later, it dropped back down. People in the character strengths, had some rise in engagement, but it fell back down. People who went through the combination training, and this could also be an artifact of it was 6 weeks, a longer training, went up and actually stayed up 4 months later. So, and I don't have the other picture, but what we also showed was it's very similar for PSYCAP. The combination of these two trainings together was able to keep the PSYCAP elevated at 4-month measurement. Okay, so Dustin had this great idea. Then I was like, wow, this is so amazing. I've got to carry this on. And I want to do it with students here at the Chicago School. And I see, there's some people that are actually in the training that are here. And so this is what it looked like. And one of the things I wanted to do is, if I was just doing research, I would have just done these weeks 4 through 8. And that SW is semester week, because we start at week 3. And I would have just said, okay, let me see PSYCAP and let me see what character strengths does. But I really thought about what students need for success. And I really thought this foundation of positive emotions and gratitude, growth mindset, and mindfulness and breathing were really key. And so I do that at the beginning of each program. And then in the fall, I did PSYCAP, and in the spring, right now, actually today is the first day at noon, we're doing character strengths. So that's what I did. And I have initial data for the fall. And the initial data that I have shows that for PSYCAP, you can see people in the training group went up roughly half a point. People in the control group stayed the same. And for academic engagement, so how engaged they are with their studies, which again is a precursor to GPA and performance, again, we're seeing the same kind of pattern. And this is with very small numbers. I think I have 19 in the training group and 12 in the control group. So each semester I'm trying to collect data and keep going on. Now, the other thing that I'm doing is not at this moment, but I'm going to be tracking GPA across 2 years. So I want to see the effect that this training has until students graduate, right? So how it impacts them in the semester and then across semesters and when they graduate. So that is the current research that I'm doing. And at this point, I think we're at the time where I want to open it up for questions.
I think people have been asking questions throughout. Do people have other questions? And again, it might be easier to just raise your hand and come off mute. Were any of them first generation?
Yeah, oh, that's a great question. And I don't have that pie chart up, but yeah, roughly about 60%. So that's another great point. So my intent, I wanted it to be for everybody, so everybody can use it. But, my strong desire is to help first generation students and students of color, people that are coming in and, their parents didn't go through grad school and they don't know what this is going to be like. And they're secretly thinking, oh, I'm going to fail. People are going to find out that I'm not so smart or whatever. And one of the things we've really found out in this class is everybody thinks that. And so I wanted to put this structure and support in place to help those students. What about age group? Is there data on that? Yeah, I've got demographics on all of it. So predominantly from the counseling program and the business program, although there's people from every program and even online that are involved, because I do offer the class online at noon. And let's see, what else? Age, we gathered how much they work. It's the typical age of the students here. What about students over the age of 55? Does it show that brains can be flexible and change? Well, what we know is they can, right? So we know that neuroplasticity is a thing now. But this is a great question. So what I should do, first of all, I need to have enough people. Maybe I have like 5, but a great idea would be to just do an ANOVA and see, the differences between the age group, maybe like, 40 and older and younger or something. Do we see that they're moving? But my numbers are so small that if anybody were to not be moving in the right direction, it probably would have impacted my results. I don't have a large number to mask small differences.
So, question also about students of color and socioeconomic status.
Great question. Okay, yeah. So definitely large percentage of my students are of color. Just same with first generation. And, it's interesting you mentioned socioeconomic status. I just recently acquired a new dissertation student, Miguel Capote, and our research question together is, what does socioeconomic status have to do with this? Because I'm kind of thinking, that may play in some way. And so, it's kind of like when we get to the workplace, we're already getting people who have made it through certain hurdles. And so what the challenge of our research will be really to survey people in low socioeconomic status. And let's see what their PsyCap looks like. And if we're still seeing some of the correlations to engagement and performance that we're seeing. That's a great question. That's one that we have.
So another question, someone said, can we add PsyCap into almost any and all dissertations? I'm first year and pretty much lost, but would like to involve this in my dissertation.
Yeah, I think one, I always say get with a faculty member who has the expertise of to do it, just because, each of my students is reading a dissertation on PsyCap, right? They're reading 6 others that went before them. Those people are getting cited. We're all working together in a team. So I think that's critical for whatever your area is. And 2, you can apply it. I do think the intervention piece is harder, but let's say, do you have access to children? I would say absolutely, and talk to me if you have any questions. I'd be happy to help. Okay.
So question.
Yeah.
So is this a certificate program, or how can you participate in this program? And what is the course you teach at noon? Is that online, and can they attend?
Yeah, it's online, and we've already started this semester, so you're kind of midway in the class. But what we did is we sent out an email to all students, and we put flyers around, and you just had to email. It's free. We do give a little certificate at the end, so that you can, it's something you can put on your resume. And we do pre and post scores, and we send you a little report to show you, how you changed. And we do that if you participate in the control group too. So it's emails that are sent out. How long is the course? It is 7 to 8 weeks, and it's right in the middle of the semester, week 3 to week 10. Because we don't want to be in the beginning when it's really stressful, and we don't want to be in the end. So again, there's no reading, there's no work. I do ask you to do like a minute exercise a day on whatever we're working on in the week, and to post on one comment on the discussion board, but that's it.
And when's the next one? Yeah, when's the next one?
I think it'll be in the fall, just because the summer's too short to really run it.
Can staff participate?
Yeah, actually anybody can participate. I'm only measuring the students, but I've had alumni, I've had administrators participate. So yeah, anybody's welcome.
And there's a question, will we be sending out the slide deck? Yes, we will. We'll send out the link to the recording as well as the PowerPoint.
And again, if you were interested in, having a positive psychology certification, using some of your electives for positive psychology courses and getting something more, this is something we have to build in the school, but the key is we need to know, it has to run through IBHE and WASC and all of our accrediting bodies. So if you're interested, and I can show that there's a large number of students that are interested, I can, make a good case to make the concentration. And I think one of the key things to, I'm giving you one tiny little piece of positive psychology. This is PsyCap, but I think any of it and all of it is relatable to each of the programs. So if you're working with children, if you're working in schools, if you're a consultant, if you're working with businesses, clinician, it's used in all.
So I know that you have to run in a minute. Do you have any final thoughts before we close out, Jennifer?
No, I thank you guys for all your questions and being here and being interested and engaged. It's been fun. I enjoyed it.
Right, and I know Dr. Thompson, as she said, she has her class at noon, so she needs to run. But if you guys, I see some additional comments coming in, please feel free to reach out to her directly if you have any additional questions. I just want to thank Dr. Thompson so much for this great presentation, and thank everyone for joining. As I said, a link to the recording will be sent out. And as a reminder, you will receive a link to complete the evaluation and quiz. Once you complete that, you will receive your certificate. Just give about a week or two for that to be sent out to you. Have a great rest of your day. Thank you so much, Jennifer.
All right. Thank you, everybody.